Grappler Baki is known by many as being the muscle manga, with each character being more humongous, shredded and jacked than the last. It's gotten to the point where they become bigger each season, which forces the author to push the limits of his representation of the human body with every new panel. By deduction though, this also means that those same mass monsters weren't as impressive at the start of the story. A prime example of that state of affair being Baki, that we see chronologically for the first time when he's 13. Despite his young age, his infamous reputation as a street fighter has caught the attention of the authorities. He's immediately presented by the author as being a violent thug, which his attire corroborates. Even though his school uniform doesn't immediately give out his affiliation with the underworld, his hair color marks him as an outsider. In Japanese culture, it is very common for delinquents to dye their hair blonde or orange to stand out and express their anti-conformism. For Baki, however, this is his natural hair color, and we'll see that this has its importance for the rest of the story. He shows no respect for authority and doesn't hesitate to challenge an adult that outweighs him by 80 pounds. Baki shows off his immense strength by winning in an instant, but makes a point of not hurting him. He doesn't show the same amount of consideration to other thugs, which he more or less considers as punching bags. We learn then that Baki doesn't mind violence, he just uses it on people who are willing to engage him in a fight. Despite his small size, he easily handles multiple opponents and shows a willingness to hurt and strike first that exemplifies the twisted upbringing he's received. Unfortunately for him, his fighting power at 13 was not enough to defeat 100 men, and he takes an L on that one. His goal, a mere 50, was still too ambitious. The fact that he managed to stay alive after being kicked in the head repeatedly and stomped on is a testimony to his immense ability to tank damages and absorb blows. You'd need to have a 25 inches neck and the yoke of an ox to handle that type of beating without losing consciousness, but that's no big deal for Baki. Undeterred, he is immediately able to move optimally after the beating and heads towards a gigantic building in one of the richest districts of Tokyo, with a host of butlers to welcome him in. Upon taking off his school uniform, Baki reveals an athletic and built physique, which is quite impressive for such a young man. The legs especially appear quite developed, with the arms and upper body staying on the smaller size, but still displaying roundness and shreds. Most would be surprised to see someone who's still in middle school display such muscles, but once you know that Baki is the son of Yujiro Hanma, the strongest creature on earth, things become much clearer. Born for the sole purpose of one day being a good enough grappler to challenge his dad in a fight, our hero is destined to be a warrior. Being strong is not only his fate, it's in his DNA. His life is entirely devoted to progression, to one day present enough of a threat that Yujiro Hanma will accept his challenge and face him in a fight. His muscles, albeit impressive and worthy of a bodybuilder, are not for show. They only serve the purpose of propelling him further and making him a better grappler. Even though he's still not done with puberty, Baki has an already well-developed V-taper with capped shoulders. His frame is small, which is a genetic trait that will be a constant defining factor of the visual aspect of his physique throughout the series. That lack of stature is made evident because of the relatively small size of his muscles. For your average preteen, and even for your average adult male, this is a more than respectable shape to be in. But for a Baki character, this is laughably meek. Baki, who's quite aware of the limitations his small stature imposes on him, is ever searching for opponents to make him better. While not rejecting weightlifting altogether, he is more keen to multiplying underground sparring sessions than undergoing a rigid weight training regimen. He showcases immense physical abilities during those bouts, with vaguely mentioned his otherworldly leg power when talking about his body size, which he demonstrates here by fighting off a double leg takedown with sheer brute strength. That stability comes directly from his core rigidity, which in terms of physique is visible through his incredibly well-developed six-pack and obliques. In terms of aesthetics, Baki's waist is on the bigger side, which makes him look all the more like a tank, but is in direct opposition with his father Yujiro's body structure, which establishes the first of a long list of qualitative differences between the two. Speaking about family, or lack thereof, Baki's mother, who he resembles a lot, is also using all the power of her wealth and connections to find worthy foes for her son to sharpen his fangs against. The stipulations are clear. They are to bid him in exchange for payment. Combine that with the resistance training sessions that he's had to follow since a young age to build his body and make him the best, and you get Baki's physique. Not the most nurturing environment for young Baki, whose love language has been touched by default. It did, however, give him the muscular power to break a tackle using only the strength of his arms, even though he faces an opponent that outsizes him by a mile. This anti-education of sorts leads Baki to behaving extremely coarsely, with an aggressivity that I can't help but compare to his father's behavior. His childhood was set up to develop antisocial behaviors in him, exemplified by the way he relates to the world around him and its inhabitants, either hostility or disinterest. Yujiro is indeed characterized by his tendency to freely express the immense violence contained within his soul, rejoicing in the sheds of blood resulting from the demise of the destroyed corpses he leaves in his wake. Those bursts of anger are often found in Baki, although he tends to immediately regret them because of his kind nature. I'm not going to expand too much on the topic, because Baki's relationship with his dad needs to be developed further, and Yujiro Hanma deserves his own muscle manga videos. But for what it's worth, this is a picture that exemplifies the type of education he gave Baki. Letting a feral dog loose upon him and watching as his boy tries his hardest to prevent the beast from sinking its fang in his throat or sectioning an artery. Personally, at that age, I was playing Pokemon. But Baki is clearly not a fan of Nintendo or RPGs, he prefers beat them all. And when he doesn't have human or simian opponents to practice against, he pummels sandbags. Punches in their patterns resemble horizontal pulls, which strongly develop the upper back. No wonder then that Baki's mid and lower traps would be so developed, dwarfing their upper portion as well as the lats. Interestingly enough, his posterior chain and upper back seem to be the most developed aspects of his physique, which in natural bodybuilders tend to be the ones that develop the latest. Often called mature muscles, the reasons they're so big on our hero is simple. He's blessed with Hanma DNA and will eventually inherit the demon back. Not only is he going to get much bigger, all that extra bulk will also be paired with immense speed that he already possesses in his current form at a superhuman level, allowing him to grab a boxer's jabs mid-air. But that potential is not fully expressed yet, and Baki is still only getting started. His face, when not strained by the fires of physical exertion, is that of a kid. And his expression when looking up at the night sky reflects the few remnants of innocence he still holds, and that the spectre of Yujiro hasn't managed to destroy yet. That youth, which should be a motive to rejoice, deeply frustrates Baki, who wishes for nothing more but strength, and to grow up is to grow stronger. While a lot of young men can relate to that feeling, it is multiplied here by the ever-looming expectation of a face-off with his father, where every single extra day of training can be the difference between life or death. That resentment towards the weakness of youth and its limitations pushes Baki to look for adult opponents to sharpen his fighting abilities. And he met quite the match in the person of Yuri, who offered him his first ever defeat in a one-on-one fight. The first loss helped him realize that there was something to be found in fighting, other than the pure progression aspect of it. By mimicry, Baki reproduced what he believed his father's attitude towards fighting to be like, a struggle for dominance and a way to assess alpha behavior. But now starts to exist the possibility that pitting your strength against the world might actually be fun, and not just a path of struggle to follow with a death at the ends of Yujiro at the end of the tunnel. This realization is the start of the rebirth of Baki, because it crystallizes the differences that make him an individual, and not just an extension of Yujiro. Underneath his rugged exterior, rash attitude and thuggish behavior, Baki is a good boy. He feels for the pain of others, and seems to be looking for a way out of this life of endless destruction. The Hanma blood in him is a blessing and a curse. It gives him an endless potential for progression, but also dooms him to a life of violence and psychopathic acts of aggression towards others. Baki is looking for a different path altogether. He refuses to finish or kill his opponents on his way to absolute mastery. Instead, he makes mentors out of them. The enemy of yesterday is the friend of tomorrow. That innate kindness, far from limiting Baki's potential, puts him in sync with who he truly is and invokes his true drive, a simple love for fighting that expresses itself through his playful and passionate demeanor in combat, and is represented visually by the insane improvements in physique he made after the fight against Yuri, and which we covered in a previous video. As far as detailing these changes in body and mind, that will be for part 2 of these muscle manga episodes about our boy Baki Hanma. Thank you for watching, have a great day.